Hey guys, this is Greg with Medical Muscle, and in this video I want to break down the grading system in clinical rotations at SGU. Because it's different than the basic science years grading system. Okay, so it's more simple. It's broken down into basically three things. You have your knowledge competency, which is NBMEs, the shelf exam at the end of the rotation. Pretty straightforward. The second one is your clinical skills, okay? And then the last is your professionalism. So you got three things to make up your grade, right? So your grade is either honors, high pass, pass, or obviously fail. So those are the options for what is gonna go on your MSRPE. It's like the thing that gets uploaded to ERAS for residencies to look at. So you have some subjective and some objective ways that you are graded. So the subjective is obviously the shelf exam, okay? So you take the exam, and then how well you do will determine, if you get honors, if you honor that, if you high pass it, or if you pass it. Now, just to clarify, each specialty, each rotation has a different honors score or a different pass score. So just for example, for medicine, internal medicine surgery, the honors was you had to get over a 78%. And the pass for surgery was a 62, and a pass for medicine was 63. That's what it was for my term. Just to clarify, these numbers might change depending on when you go into your rotation. But the general rule is that medicine surgery, the threshold for honors is gonna be lower and the threshold for passing is gonna be lower. All right, whereas psychiatry, you have to get a 75% to pass, and you have to get over an 85 to get honors, okay? So the less difficult the shelf, the higher the standards, the more difficult, the lower the standards to pass and get honors and things like that. Okay, now the other two sections, the subjective parts, okay, there's subjective parts within the clinical skills and the professionalism. Your weekly firecracker quizzes, all you have to do is just complete them. Your patient logs, right? So if basically every rotation, you're gonna have things that you have to see and document. Like say if you're in surgery, you see an appendectomy, you mark that off. And say there's like 40 different things that you have to see. Not very hard. All you have to do is just check a box. That's all you're doing. For my term, there was a mid-rotation exam run by SGU for medicine and surgery. I think they're gonna start doing that for more rotations, maybe all of them. That didn't go into our grade, but I heard that that's a possibility for future terms. So that's just something to be aware of. So those are some other things. So you have these three components that you're graded on. You have the exam, the shelf exam, and then you have the clinical skills and the professionalism. Those are separate. But how you're graded on those, obviously you have your weekly quizzes and your participation. But it's also, that is the main bulk of what that's graded off of is your evaluations, okay? So for the most part, during a rotation, you get this little piece of paper. It's got, all these different things like high, above expected, at expected, below expected, awful, or something like that. And it's what you're gonna give to the attendings or sometimes the residents. Sometimes for that rotation, it's okay to give it to a resident. And they mark it off and they say, what level you're at. And that determines the other two sections' grades. Generally, people do okay on that. They do pretty well because most SGU students are very professional and they have good clinical skills. I gotta say, SGU did a great job training us in hands-on clinical skills and presenting. So you're not gonna have too big of a problem of honoring those sections, but it's subjective, okay? I'm gonna tell you the truth. Some people may not be in a good mood and they may only briefly get to interact with you, and the one interaction they had with you, you happen to mess up you didn't answer the question correctly, and then when you were presenting the patient, you might have forgot something, or the plan wasn't very clear. Maybe it's your first week on the service and you're just trying to understand what they want, and they write you a poor one. That's possible. So to mitigate this problem, it's true, this can happen. Be professional every single day when you're dealing with the attendings that are going to be evaluating you. It's just straightforward. That means showing up early, becoming very organized, okay? When you're presenting a patient, I want you to write everything out. Someone told me that, and it was a great idea. Make sure you write everything. Don't do it from your memory. You don't have to. Write a cheat sheet so that you know what you're going to say, okay? And then as you get better, then you can freestyle and just, explain it from the top of your head. But in the beginning, write everything out because you don't want to miss anything. And also, there's nothing wrong with looking at other doctors' notes on that same patient or residents. You want to create your own plan. You want to maybe create your own maybe suggestions if you can add something unique to it. But use what other doctors do and use that as a reference for how to keep treating this patient, okay? Now, on the flip side, on the subjective side, there were doctors that I just got along with. We would just crack jokes. We were talking about things like exercise. We were not even talking about things about medicine. The person gave me a great review. We were just shooting the shit, okay? And that's just because they liked me. Okay, it had nothing to do with my clinicals at all. They didn't get to see any of my clinical skills, and they wrote me a perfect one. Okay, so it can also help you in the subjective matter too. So I just want you to be aware of that. Okay, so also just be good at chit-chatting if that happens to be the situation, because sometimes that happens. Anesthesia, for some reason, that's it. They intubate and then they want to talk about their kids' soccer performance. They're like, oh yeah, interesting. Okay. Or watches. Some people are really into watches. I don't know. Figure it out. You got to play it by ear. Okay, so those are your 3 components. Okay, now, how do you get, let's say, honors? So out of those 3 components, you got to get at least 2 out of the 3 have to be honors. The third one could be honors. Obviously, if you get all honors on all 3, you'd have honors for the rotation, or a high pass. So they allow you to get 1 tick lower to get the title that you want. So for say if for you to get high pass, you could either get high pass in all 3 sections, or you get high pass in 2 of the sections and you get pass in the third. Like say on the shelf, you just passed it, you just barely passed it. Say if you got honors in the clinical skills and the professionalism, because you probably will, right? Most SGU students do really well, but you just barely passed the exam, you'll get high pass on the rotations. That's pretty nice. Now, again, this may change depending on the year that you go into clinicals. I know they've modified these numbers for passing, and they've modified the grading system, but currently that's what we had. What else can I add with this? If you fail a rotation, from what I understand, this is just from what I understand, if you fail a rotation, and how do people fail a rotation? Well, obviously, if you're not professional, if you failed the clinical skills and you maybe failed the exam, obviously that would cause you to fail the rotation. But I think more than anything, it's calling in sick too many days, missing too many days of the rotation for whatever reason, which is unfortunate. I know people that just, people get into situations, people get COVID, people get some serious, health condition. I've heard of people developing Graves' disease during rotations or something crazy. That stuff does happen. And for some reason you can't complete the rotation. You would have to take it at the end of all the core rotations. So if you start in August, say an August start date, at the end of all those rotations would be like May or June, then you would complete the 6 weeks again, right? Not common, obviously, because, not everybody has that situation. The most common is that someone fails a shelf. So say if you passed the clinical skills and you were there every day, you're a professional, but you just happen to fail the shelf, which actually happens quite often, more frequently than anybody would want, but it happens. What will happen is you complete all the rotations, right? At the end of the year, they give you, like if it's a 6-week rotation, they give you 4 weeks to study and repeat that shelf, okay? The downside of that is that, say if you had an August start date and you're done in June or whatever, May, in your rotations, and now you're in dedicated technical, well, you cannot sit for step 2 until you've completed that exam. So I know people that were in that situation. It was tough. Basically, they had to study for both, which is maybe fine. I mean, say if you failed the IM rotation, during your step stuff, you could just have a designated time just for IM, which is the bulk of step 2 anyway, and then you take step 2. So that's the weird situations if you end up failing something. Oh, and just an add-on for family medicine, right? So you have shelf exams for all these others. For family medicine, all you have to do is just pass. You gotta get over 65. So that one is the only one that you can't honor. Yeah, and then basically that's your whole grade. So there's some objective things, there's some subjective things, and it's really on you to start studying as early as possible, because occasionally you'll be asked random questions during rotations or during rounds. If you know that just answering that one question can make a huge difference to how that person perceives you. Okay, and anything that you say after, they'll just perceive. Like if you said something intelligent, intelligent response, then they'll just assume that everything you say after, right? You know what's going on. Whereas if you miss that, but you say the exact same things, maybe people think of you more poorly. Okay, and write not a great review. Okay, that's the grading system. I hope that helped, guys, and I hope you guys are kicking butt.